When people talk about ghost towns, Washington State holds thousands of wooden structures slowly rotting beneath fir trees and drifting wheat field dust. From the peaks of the Cascades to the Canadian border, these towns did not simply fade away. They were abandoned after economic collapse, shifting railroad routes, and even deadly natural disasters. They are more than urban legends. They remain as physical remnants of 19th and 20th century ambition, now overtaken by time. These 15 locations represent the mining, logging, and agricultural history that shaped the Northwest. So where are these towns? First is a town often described as an open-air museum near the border. Located just a few miles from Canada near Oroville, Molson stands out among ghost towns. Founded in 1900 by George Meacham and John Molson, it quickly grew to a population of 300 people, complete with a newspaper and a hotel. Molson's history, however, is divided into two chapters, Old Molson and New Molson. Unusually, the original town declined because of land ownership disputes that forced residents to relocate about half a mile away to establish a new settlement. Today, the original site operates as a well-preserved outdoor museum. Visitors can see massive rusting farm equipment, an old post office, and rows of wooden buildings still standing across wide-open prairie. Access is relatively easy via paved roads that eventually turn to gravel, surrounded by rolling hills and small lakes. Molson offers a clear example of how land law complications can end a town just as quickly as a failed mine. Heading west from Molson, you reach Nighthawk. For anyone searching for the classic but genuine image of a frontier town, this is the place. Nighthawk reached its peak in 1903 as a logistics hub for nearby mines such as Ruby and Bodie. The most striking structure is the old post office, still displaying its original sign. Unlike government-managed ghost towns, Nighthawk feels private and deeply quiet. The buildings lean under decades of weathering, yet details like window frames and fragments of interior walls remain visible. The town declined when silver prices collapsed and railroads stopped serving as the primary transportation link in the isolated Okanogan region. Then there is Bodie, often considered a hidden gem in Okanogan County. Located along Highway 21, it once operated as a gold processing center. What makes Bodie visually compelling is the row of wooden houses that appear almost a sway as their foundations slowly sink into the earth. Gold production here once reached remarkable levels, but by 1934, mining operations officially ceased. Today, the site sits on protected private land, so visitors can only observe it from the roadside. The scene creates a sharp contrast between past economic prosperity and the wild vegetation steadily reclaiming the former miners' settlement. Not far from Bodie, Chesaw tells a slightly different story. Named after a Chinese prospector, Chesaw, who married a Native American woman, the town became a lively hub during the gold rush of the 1890s. Today, a small number of residents still live in the surrounding area, which places Chesaw in the category of a semi-ghost town. Weathered wooden buildings stand alongside modest traces of present-day life. Every July, the town hosts a rodeo that briefly revives the spirit of its frontier past. For the rest of the year, Chesaw settles back into a quiet that feels almost haunting. Unlike a full ghost town, Liberty carries a different distinction. It is one of the oldest continuously inhabited gold mining settlements in Washington. Located in the Swauk Mining District, Liberty was founded in 1873. One notable feature is its strict historic zoning rules, which require new buildings to match the aesthetic of the original structures. Liberty's landscape is defined by antique mining equipment and small wooden houses lining a narrow road. While it is not abandoned, the atmosphere feels suspended in another era. Its accessibility, just a few miles from Highway 97, makes it one of the most educational places to observe how placer gold mining once operated. In Lincoln County stands one of the most striking and somber visuals in Washington, Govan. Once a thriving railroad and agricultural town with hundreds of residents, Govan declined after a series of devastating fires and the construction of Highway 2, which bypassed the community entirely. The most prominent remaining structure is a two-story schoolhouse standing alone in the middle of vast wheat fields. Photographers from around the world are drawn to the sharp contrast between its classic architecture and the surrounding emptiness. There are no stores, no residents, only the skeletal school building and remnants of a grain elevator, quiet markers of a once stable community that has long since disappeared. Like Govan, Sherman became a casualty of changing agricultural technology and shifting transportation routes. Located on the high plains of eastern Washington, Sherman was once a close-knit farming community. What remains today is a small white church and a school building slowly falling into ruin. Sherman Church has become one of the most atmospheric landmarks in the state. Standing on a gentle hill, it still carries a quiet elegance, maintained and repainted by volunteers determined to keep it standing. The town began to empty out in the 1940s as agricultural mechanization reduced the need for manual labor, pushing farming families to relocate to larger cities in search of opportunity. Then there is Monte Cristo, a name woven deeply into Washington's mining history. Hidden within the Cascade Mountains, this silver mining town once attracted investment from powerful industrialists, including John D. Rockefeller. In the 1890s, Monte Cristo was envisioned as a thriving mountain metropolis, complete with grand hotels and a railroad carved into steep cliffs. Geography ultimately became its downfall. Repeated floods destroyed rail lines, and the silver ore proved less profitable than expected. Reaching Monte Cristo today requires a hike of about 4 miles, as the original road has long since washed away. Visitors encounter the remains of a massive concentrator and scattered residential structures still standing against harsh mountain weather. Near Stevens Pass lies Wellington, a ghost town defined by function and tragedy. It once served as a refueling station and housing site for workers of the Great Northern Railway. On March 1st, 1910, the deadliest avalanche in United States history struck here, sweeping 2 stranded trains off the tracks and killing 96 people. The town was later renamed Thai in an attempt to distance it from the trauma, but it was eventually abandoned after a new tunnel rerouted the railway. Today, Wellington is marked by enormous concrete snowsheds that resemble ancient, moss-covered temples. Walking the Iron Goat Trail through the site evokes both sorrow for the lives lost and admiration for the engineering feats of an earlier era. Leicester carries one of the most unusual closure stories in Washington. Located along a major railroad line, the town might have survived under different circumstances. However, it sat within the Cedar River watershed, the primary source of drinking water for Seattle. To protect water purity, public access to Leicester was gradually restricted. For years, a single longtime resident refused to leave, remaining until his death in 2002. Today, most buildings have been demolished for environmental protection and safety reasons. What remains are fragments of foundations and a few minor structures, hidden behind locked iron gates that block vehicle access. Have you ever heard of Bordeaux? It shares its name with a major French city, yet in Washington, it was once a dominant logging town in Thurston County. Established in the early 1900s, Bordeaux featured a massive sawmill and an extensive internal railroad network. When surrounding timber resources were depleted by the 1940s, the town was abandoned. Today, Bordeaux represents the nature reclaiming industry. Concrete mill structures are covered in thick moss and creeping vines. Remnants of old fuel bunkers resemble the ruins of a forgotten battlefield. Its location deep within the forest means many hikers pass nearby without realizing it exists, adding to the sense of mystery for those who manage to find it. In King County, Franklin stands as a reminder of Washington's coal mining past. Unlike the gold towns in the east, Franklin developed as a tough industrial settlement marked by labor conflict. One of its darkest chapters was the 1894 mining disaster that killed 37 miners. Reaching Franklin requires a short hike that leads to sealed mine openings and an old cemetery tucked into a hillside. The most striking visual element is a deep vertical mine shaft, now enclosed behind iron fencing. The town faded as energy consumption shifted from coal to petroleum, leaving behind only fragments of its once harsh industrial life. Just a few miles from Carbonado, Melmont was once a coal mining town operating from 1900 into the 1920s. It had everything a working community needed: a school, a general store, even a brewery. After the mine shut down, many of its wooden buildings were either burned or dismantled and moved elsewhere. Today, only concrete foundations and fragments of the stone school walls remain. Exploring Melmont feels like an archaeological treasure hunt, as most structural traces are hidden beneath dense brush. The town stands as a clear example of how a settlement can nearly disappear within less than a century. In Whitman County, Elberton once thrived as a milling center thanks to its location along the North Fork of the Palouse River. A devastating fire in 1908, combined with the decline of local industry, led to a sharp population drop. The most striking landmark in Elberton is its red brick church, still standing and remarkably photogenic. Surrounded by mature trees and farmland, the church anchors what remains of the town. Although the road remains accessible, old bridge remnants and scattered house ruins hint at a community that once aimed to become a major trade hub in the Palouse region. The list closes with Claquato in Lewis County. Founded in 1853, Claquato was once a strong candidate to become the regional county seat. Its fate changed when the Northern Pacific Railroad chose to route its line near Chehalis instead of through Claquato. With the railroad came commerce, and without it, Claquato's economy slowly declined. Residents relocated closer to the train station. What remains today is the Claquato Church, built in 1858 and recognized as the oldest standing church in Washington, still on its original site. Its simple architecture stands as a lasting symbol of how a single corporate railroad decision could determine the survival or collapse of an entire small community. Exploring these 15 ghost towns across Washington reveals how progress often leaves silence in its wake. Each concrete ruin in Wellington and each lonely schoolhouse in Govan reminds us that economic ambition is always bound to limited resources and changing times. Washington was built not only on its thriving cities, but also on the foundations of these quiet places left behind. Studying them allows us to honor histories rarely detailed in major textbooks, yet permanently preserved in the stillness of weathered wood and stone.